Welcome to Expressions of Leadership. I'm your host, Michele Kawamoto Perry. In every episode, we explore how people from educators and artists to executives and entrepreneurs lead with authenticity, rise through adversity, and share the wisdom they've gained along the way. Today's guest has dedicated his life to helping people transform pain into purpose and connection. Brad Wolfe is a musician, social entrepreneur, and founder of Reimagine, where he brings people together to explore life, loss, and healing. His path began with a deeply personal loss in college, inspiring him to create music and build community as a way to help others find meaning in their own experiences. In this conversation, we explore the connection between suffering and growth and what leadership looks like when it's rooted in presence, compassion, and service. Brad, welcome to Expressions of Leadership. It's great to have you with us.
It's so good to be here. Thank you, Michele, for having me.
Well, Brad, let's start at the beginning. You've shared that the death of your friend Sarah during college was a defining moment in your life. What do you remember most about that time and how it shaped the path that you would eventually take?
I remember being in the hospital on really almost a daily basis, bringing my guitar to the hospital, not knowing how else to show up for someone I cared about so deeply, going through something so hard. No one taught me about grief. It was not something we learned in school. I wish there was more education on it. But for myself, I was just so grateful with so much in me, so many emotions percolating of confusion and fear and upsetness and love, that I had this guitar that allowed me to take it to the hospital with me and play music for Sarah, and sit there by her bedside and in times when even her physical symptoms seemed challenging and her emotional state was either seemed down or sometimes kind of absent. She was probably trying to process what she was experiencing. The music seemed to really bring some kind of healing to her, but also then also to me. And so it was like a way of connecting. So yeah, I really just remember, through it all, I guess, the music.
And now you're releasing an album called Lost that has been decades in the making. What does this project represent for you at this stage in your life?
Oh man, it's been such a journey from that time with Sarah, and I think it was so interesting to think about this idea of channeling our pain. I had that experience for myself of being able to channel my own grief and my own pain into songs and what's so powerful about it, that I've been reflecting on is as I was channeling my own emotions, they ended up helping Sarah a little bit. And then as more people started hearing some of the songs, I saw that music has a way of helping other people too. You know what I mean? So it's this beautiful, this idea that I could do something that was healing for me, and at the same time where I'm healing myself, there's some healing in it for others. And then as I think about the state of the world today and all of the pain in the world, and the way that we can respond to it, what if we could respond to it through something that not only healed ourselves, but healed others? And so I started thinking, what is this idea of channeling our pain? And that put me on a long mission in life to investigate this concept of like why people talk about therapy, but music feels so healing. And so subsequently, I've been around thousands of conversations about loss and grief and experiences that surround these topics as I've explored this question. And I've been confronted with all kinds of different types of loss and all kinds of different ways of healing. And through it all, I think, these conversations and meeting different people going through their own challenges and having more opportunities, for example, to play music for other people at the end of their life, continuing to transform and transmute music for myself to react to those experiences, It's accumulated now into a set of songs and stories that I'm really excited to start sharing. My work now is about helping community, uh, but for me on a personal level, I've never let go of the music at the center of really everything. For me, that's my music is my music. And so, yeah, I'm just so excited to release these songs about loss. So many of them are personal and and explore this topic not necessarily in just a morbid way, but also in a way that thinks about the ways that loss and pain can help, when channeled, can help generate new possibilities for our lives.
And when did you start to realize that the story behind the music, the meaning behind Sarah's life and death, was resonating with other people?
I mean, I learned that quite immediately, honestly, because I wrote a song when she was ill called "Sarah's Got a Sunbeam," and I was headed off to on a trip for a while and wasn't going to be able to be around, and I was sad to leave her without having staying connected. So I wrote a song, and I had all of her friends over, and I debuted the song for her. It was a period when she wasn't necessarily in the hospital that week, and played Sarah's Got a Sunbeam, and I don't know, it was just a really powerful moment just with Sarah and her friends, and then throughout my own musical journey after Sarah died, she had encouraged me to pursue music professionally, and was just wrapping up college, and had thought of a different career path for myself. But you realize the preciousness of life, um, as you're by the bedside of somebody, whose life at 21, you know, theoretically could have been, wish it was much longer. Um, and as I started playing the songs inspired by Sarah for more people, I started seeing the connection that people had. And honestly, the connection wasn't even about the music itself. I like to think it had something to do with it, but honestly, I think it's more the fact that people related to the story of Sarah and this connection that her and I had, and the backstory. And I think in our culture, we're just so quick. Every piece of art has a story. Every photograph has a story. Most of our actions, there's a story behind it, but we're so quick to thumbs up or thumbs down something in the world, and not really take the time to understand the context. And so when we do understand the context, I don't think I'm alone that if you trace, what's come out of like a pain for so many people, so many beautiful things, and the story behind it just deepens that art, and it transforms it from art to something that we can relate to on a human level. So I've seen that throughout my whole journey, and that idea of understanding more of the context of things has really become something I've learned through music that I try to bring forward into my broader mission.
And how did that experience change your understanding of meaning and purpose in your own life?
Oh, it was so interesting. I mean, meaning and purpose is something I've always been interested in, and this tension in America, between I actually did this is very nerdy, but I did a master's thesis, and my master's thesis was called Aspirational Discordance in the Selection of a College Major: Emersonian Passion versus the American Dream. And as Sarah was dying, I was literally writing this paper thinking about, why is it that people don't pursue the things that matter most to them? Why is it that there's this discordance in following in America this idea that follow your passion? That's something that we tend to believe is an ethos in America. At the same time, there's this ethos around the white picket fence, this certain kind of lifestyle, upward mobility, and this kind of vision of this certain kind of American life. How do you do both, or where do they come in conflict? And why is it that if you think about so many people, at least that I knew, they don't pursue the thing that in their heart that they loved? And here I was researching this when the thing that I loved the most was music. And I was grappling with this question of like, why aren't I pursuing? Honestly, it's like, I think I was trying to grapple with these ideas. It's like, I have this education, but really what's in my heart is the music. And so what makes it okay? When do you think about the now versus the future? These kinds of questions. So when Sarah, went through this experience, and I was fortunate enough to be guided by her inspiration. Um, it really made me try to live out the things that I was studying, and try to think about not putting off um, what tomorrow may have happened in lieu of what you could have right now, because you never know.
Well, looking back now, how did that begin to shape the kind of leader that you would eventually become?
Well, I think that's a really, in terms of leadership, I think that's a really really big question, because there's always a tension between your future vision for what you're trying to create as a leader, and where you are on that journey, and um, and what you prioritize. I mean, I do believe that it's really easy to get caught up in things that are not the deeper dream that you have. And if we don't stay focused on what's deep in your heart, and you start prioritizing the distractions along the way, or certain outcomes that aren't connected to your deeper purpose, you can quickly lose sight of what you're really doing. And so I really want to stay tethered as a leader to the deepest intention for myself, or for my team, or for the really, but for the vision or the mission of an organization, or the deeper purpose. At the same time, you say that you do have to also balance that to some degree with also being in the present. So there's being and being where you are, and not worrying about where you're not, because the journey to a dream is a long journey. It's really about the journey. So that's the deeper idea, that you have a dream, but it's also about the journey itself, and where you are today on that dream, and trying to find the beauty in all the hard parts along the way, because out of those hard parts is where a lot of the learning and growth happens, and you're never really there. But that purpose keeps you oriented. Today keeps you grounded. And then between those two spaces, there is a space for planning, for considering, and the trade-offs between prioritizing living right now for the moment, and having that longer view. And that tension is a real one that I think, as our humans, we have to continue to navigate, because we can't eat all the ice cream, right now. Though, if you ask me what I want to do right now, it probably would be go and eat all the ice cream. But if I think about the ice cream, it's not quite in line with my deeper purpose.
Exactly. And what we do today is shaping what's going to happen in the future. So we do also have to be cognizant of what we're doing today and be really intentional in that present moment.
It's so true, and that's why I think, yeah, staying grounded in your deeper why kind of keeps bringing you back to the future, but also to the present. And there's that exercise, if you ask why enough times.
The five whys. Yep.
Right, right. And what's so powerful about the five whys is, by the time you get to the fifth why, the things that are at the base are things that most of us care deeply about, and they're really human things. And you can see how much we have in common, and how sacred what is often at the root of our decisions and our priorities. It comes down to love and family and connection, or sometimes the absence. If the absence of those things.
Well, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll talk about how Brad's personal journey evolved into building communities and leading work that now touches so many lives. Stay with us. Leadership isn't just about strategy, it's about people. The Forward Project helps organizations cultivate strong, adaptable leaders who create thriving workplace cultures. If you're ready to invest in your leadership team, visit www.theforwardproject.co to learn how. Welcome back to Expressions of Leadership. I'm Michele Kawamoto Perry, and today we're in conversation with Brad Wolfe, musician, community builder, and founder of Reimagine, whose work focuses on helping people transform loss into connection and purpose. So, Brad, your path has included music and entrepreneurship, business school, and work in the well-being space. Which experiences most prepared you to lead the work that you're doing today?
I'm cheating with this answer, but I try to see it all coming together. Honestly, there's this concept called flow, which is where the level of challenge meets your level of skill.
Mhm.
And as you keep progressing, it gets harder and harder. I feel like I'm constantly on that edge. I'm constantly on the edge of, and maybe that's because the purpose that I'm working toward is rather big. I mean, we're trying to help people respond differently to the hard parts of life, to channel their pain in healthy ways, and there's so much suffering in the world, and there's so many ways of responding that hurt one another, that exacerbate our suffering. So the mission is very, very lofty, and the steps toward making an indent in that idea are small and sweet, and well earned. And so I'm all these experiences, whether it's uh, you know the experiences I discussed with Sarah playing music for her, the experiences of realizing I didn't know enough about business, or I wasn't taken seriously enough because I had crazy ideas, so I had to go ground myself in business school to have to have a little bit more credibility, but also learn some additional good things. And the other experiences that I've had with loss, it's just like, I think it was, I don't want to be one of those people that quote Steve Jobs, and I don't even remember what his quote was per se, but I know there's this idea of trying to, think interdisciplinarily about one's life and trying to bring the pieces together. And I feel like that's the only way I could have gotten to where I am now, is by just continuing to embrace all the parts of my experience and try to figure out almost like what can they mean.
And at one point, you worked with IDEO on a large scale exploration of death and dying. What surprised you most about how people approach those conversations?
Yeah, so IDEO brought me in to think about the intersection of art, meaning, and the end of life experience. And they knew that there was some relationship between those terms, art, meaning, and the end of life, which is a really beautiful thing to explore, honestly. And I think we all know it's true. I think the thing that really was eye opening, which was the precursor to a lot of the work that I'm doing now through that experience, is coming to see that when we tend to solve problems around something like an end of life, like where it's like, oh man, how do I deal with the logistics of this experience? A lot of people don't want to leverage the tools that are available because no one wants to talk about end of life, because it's scary, it's painful, it's sad. There's a lot of negative emotional states that come with thinking about um, something like death. And that's where I feel like art comes in. If you think about, when I was playing music for Sarah, there was definitely something that words alone could not get at. There's something that's, and I don't know if the word is spirituality, I don't, however you want to characterize it, but we need other ways in to open up our hearts, and something maybe beyond the tactical, something and in business, we don't often prioritize those other ways in. And so part of, the reimagine concept is to try to leverage creativity, and in all its forms. It doesn't even have to be lofty creativity, but we're all creative in just the way that we get through the day. And how do we use those moments and those pieces of creativity as gateways that could open up our heart, whether it's a warm conversation or a song or a poem or some kind of artistic expression. There's ways in, and I feel like the big learning was that our by opening our and meeting people at a heart level. I mean, it's very basic. It's people actually really want to talk about these things. It's like things that seem so taboo and so off the table, something that we as a society keep hush hush. We're all experiencing many of the same things. And that just by opening it up and by meeting each other on the level of our hearts instead of our heads, it starts creating the kind of a softer entry point for us to find the depth of our humanity.
And then what started as this idea eventually became Reimagine, a global community. At what point did you realize that this work had grown into something bigger than you?
Yeah, so what we did at IDEO and how we thought about this is we put together we called it a festival, but it really wasn't a festival. It was a citywide convening, if you will, to open up dialogue around the end of life experience by hosting conversations, creative endeavors in places where people already lived or where they worked or maybe where they worshiped or where they played. So we had events in black churches and in temples and mosques, in comedy clubs, in art galleries, in hospitals, in graveyards. San Francisco City Hall had an event where we had millennials uh, engaging in a dance party uh, with seniors, and it was about kind of appreciating the aging process. It's like different types of experiences that brought people together to open up a dialogue. And just going to these, it started out that first year we had maybe 40 or 50 events. We did it again the following year, and we had 350 experiences across the city in a week in all these different spaces. And then it moved to New York and it moved to LA, and just started seeing the power of connecting across, also connecting across difference, because this topic of end of life is something after we're born. There's very few things that it feels like we have in common. Death is certainly one that we logically can't escape knowing that this is something we all must deal with. And so therefore, how might the reality of our life bring us together to actually see that we have a lot more in common, and using that as a gateway in to begin envisioning the world that we want for ourselves, a world where we can actually open up dialogue, where we can talk to a stranger, where we can engage with our community, where people where we realize that challenges, we're all experiencing life in the hard parts and the good parts, and it's all there um, for us if we support one another. I started seeing that happen again and again in these events, and that's when it really started clicking that you know we got to keep pushing this idea of opening up dialogue, but opening up our hearts simultaneously, and then what kinds of structures might we create that bring more of that to more people.
And then during COVID, many people were facing loss and isolation at that time. What was one leadership challenge that you faced during that period?
I mean, I would say COVID was like many experiences that we talk about, where there's a lot of pain, and then within pain there's possibility. And that's really what it felt like as a leader during COVID, because as I just described, at that point in Reimagine's journey, we were hosting these large scale citywide festivals for tens of thousands of people. And all of a sudden, we can no longer host experiences that brought people together. And in some ways, that could have just immediately kind of crushed us as an organization. But we were able to, by prioritizing the mission, trying to figure out how can we still help people. And then, obvious in retrospect now, but we were able to have conversations like this one, where we started using Zoom very early on. We partnered with UC Berkeley, the Greater Good Science Center, and started hosting conversations called A Dose of Togetherness, where during COVID people were able to get on here and really talk about what was happening, and express and connect. And through those experiences, where we've produced now over 4,500 virtual events, have seen that though we started out talking about death loss, which was happening to such an awful degree during COVID, but started also seeing the different types of losses that were accumulating. There's the collective grief. There's grief related to the racial reckoning that we need to have as a country. There's financial pain. People are dealing with breakups, serious illness. I mean, people's losses are interrelated, and we tend to treat people and their experiences as like, oh, I have this, I have this, these very binary categories. Whereas like the human experience, and became very clear during COVID, is there is just a mounting sense and a compounding sense of grief that we're facing. But how do we respond to all of this in a healthier way? And I think COVID really, for us, started pointing us toward a deeper understanding of the human picture, and more ways of thinking about how to support people, not just by coming together initially, but how do we create the scaffolding by which we are able to support people on the journey from feeling that sense of grief to ultimately transmuting our pain, and responding to it in a healthier way, in a more connected way, less isolating way. And that's we've gone in a we've expanded to a new direction that it wouldn't have manifested had it not been for this challenge of COVID. In the same way that a death loss in our life can point you in new directions, and it doesn't take away the pain from the experience, but there's also, as I mentioned, some possibility in the pain.
Well, we're going to take another short break. When we return, we'll explore how service and personal experience can shape the way we lead others. Don't go anywhere. True transformation starts from within. The Forward Project partners with organizations to create meaningful culture shifts and develop leaders who inspire real change. If your team is ready to move forward with purpose, visit www.theforwardproject.co. This is Expressions of Leadership. I'm Michele Kawamoto Perry, and today we're speaking with Brad Wolfe about how personal experiences can shape leadership and how community can become a powerful force for healing. Brad, in your work, you help people discover what you call their own music. How do you help someone begin that process?
Yeah, I think the thing is, everyone has music inside of them, and music as a metaphor. For me, as I mentioned, I mean, I do feel like we actually all have literal music inside of us, so that's a separate conversation as well. But I feel like we all, there's something inside of each of us that lights us up. And and the thing is, we are our dreams are often squashed starting in childhood, and we don't have the space to consider those dreams. What we try to do at Reimagine is, after a loss, after something hard, there's a process by which we help people. It begins with believing that growth is possible. And that takes, you need to hear the stories of other people, often to real stories, not just what happens at the end of this beautiful rainbow, perhaps, but the stories of struggle, of transformation, of the journey. It's not a linear process. So learning these stories, that's step one. Step two is building emotional regulation. Can I take a deep breath? Can I go for a walk? Step three is being able to share your own story in a safe space, in a safe community, and actually share what's actually happening. But to your question, step four in our process is about building a new narrative for your life. And that is where the dreams come in. Because if we give ourselves space to think about, we may have just had something really hard happen to us. Now there's a chance in life. There's a rupture. There's something that's painful that's happened. We may have new constraints that are placed on us. We may not have the person that we loved with us anymore. We may have just been diagnosed with an illness, or maybe we're going through an aging process, and a faculty that we once took for granted, or we had, is no longer feasible for us. There's a set of constraints, and also there may be a set of dreams that we have in our life that could be shaped by our constraints now, our new set of constraints, or could be a dream we've long held. If we, and this is what the research bears out, if we can take the time out of something hard to think about, now, out of this rupture, what new dream do I care about? My priorities may be shifted because I realize the sacredness of life, of my impermanence, of all this being taken away. And by attaching or searching our hearts to find that dream, and then taking small, sweet steps towards that dream, and tying that dream back to the pain itself and saying, this is being created. I'm moving toward this dream only because of this painful thing. Making that connection helps us rewire our brains towards the pain itself. Maybe the dream is planting a garden, literal or metaphorical. In terms of music, maybe it's writing a song. Maybe it's listening to a song. Maybe it's singing a song out loud in your car. A dream can be very, very small, especially when it's broken down into small, sweet components. But by helping people take small, bite sized actions that are born out of their pain, and starting to see that beauty and impact and music, whatever that means to you, can manifest from your pain, is a very powerful awareness that we can start seeing manifest. And there's ways of processing our pain which can be more generative, more expansive. And so tapping into your own music is really the key, in my metaphor, to how we might better respond to the hard parts of life.
And you mentioned earlier that your work brings people together from very different backgrounds to talk about deeply personal experiences. And trust is such a foundational element of leadership. What helps create trust in those spaces?
Well, I think that's a great question, first of all, because trust and safety are foremost. And we have a set of principles, and we take time in all of our meetings going through a set of principles about what kind of space that we are creating, what kind of space we're not creating, and we let people opt in to the spaces that we are creating. And one of those principles, in addition to respecting people from all backgrounds, non-judgmentalness, there's a whole series of them. But one of them I want to just call out here is that we will fumble, we will make mistakes, we may offend. This is an imperfect space, and if we all enter with that acknowledgement that we're trying to co-create something, and it's going to be imperfect, but we're also willing to clean up our side of the street when we make a mistake. Um, and kind of modeling that out, I feel like that those are the most important parts of creating a space, because you can create whatever space you want, but you're gonna, especially when you're on the edges of dealing with hard things, there's gonna be messy moments, and when things don't go according to plan, and that's when the true colors and the fabric of your organization or your leadership really shines through and has a chance to, and that's where you need that acknowledgement, and to not be defensive about what's happening, but to really meet people and really see people and really honor their experience, and be willing to clean up your side of the street, because these are fraught concepts, and you're not going to make everybody happy all the time, and that's very hard as someone who's a people pleaser, as someone who's like semi kind of closeted perfectionist, I guess. It's like you don't want to disappoint people, but people will be disappointed. Uh, and so how do you meet those moments, but showing people that you're willing to meet those moments, I believe that's where real trust is built.
Well, learning through our missteps or from our challenging moments can be used as resource through empathy to be of service to others. And you often emphasize acts of service as part of healing. Can you share more about that?
Yeah, so I shared a minute ago, actually, I shared the four kind of major components that as we see them, um, knowing that growth is possible, practicing emotional regulation, sharing your story in a safe space, creating a new narrative. The fifth is in terms of how do we actually heal, and grow from our pain. The fifth is often characterized in research on post-traumatic growth, is doing acts of service in the area of your pain, and as a surefire way to find growth and healing in the pain. And if you think about it, it makes so much sense as a concept, right? If you think about let's think about like healthcare. How many people are in the healthcare profession because they themselves grew up and maybe they had some physical challenge or mental health challenge, or somebody they know did, and as a way of healing from that, or as a way of they end up entering into a profession like that, or someone who's gone through a traumatic experience going back and trying to share their story with other people who have gone through the same experience. You know, my grandparents, for example, were Auschwitz survivors, and they talked about their experience in the concentration camps, and that I think healed them, but it helped others learn about their journey. And it's this idea again of using your pain, and seeing that your experience is validated and it has an impact on others in a powerful way. That gives you more meaning around. It kind of helps you, whether or not there is any true meaning in it or not. It helps you feel like that experience, to some degree, there was something about it that you went through, that you learned, that you could help others with, and that is very healing for us if we can access it. And so we do think about acts of service in that, can we help people? But service doesn't have to be volunteering. Again, an act of service could be an act of self-care, because when you take care of yourself, you can then better take care of others. So it could be, apologizing to somebody could be an act of service. Um, Creativity, any action you take where ultimately where that action can maybe benefit others to some degree, I consider that an act of service. And if you can tie that act of service back to the pain in your mind and see this, I did this thing because of that thing, or in part because of that thing, you start seeing the connections that are forged in our existence between our pain and our well-being, that we can't have one without the other.
We're going to pause for a moment. And when we return, we'll talk about how leaders sustain themselves while doing emotionally demanding work. We'll be right back. Are you looking to connect with an audience passionate about leadership, growth, and success? Become a sponsor of Expressions of Leadership and align your brand with inspiring conversations that make an impact. Contact us at letstalk@expressionsofleadership.com to explore sponsorship opportunities. Welcome back to Expressions of Leadership. I'm Michele Kawamoto Perry, and today we're in conversation with Brad Wolfe about the connection between personal experience, community, and leadership. Brad, you talk about holding space for others. What does that look like for you in practice?
So at Reimagine, we've built this social platform, and there's no like button at the center of it. There's no quick thumbs up or kind of validate you by how many different people see your post or this or that. Instead, we have called the holding space button. And all we simply do is when we read somebody else's story, we simply take some deep breaths. And it kind of prompts you. It's a button. You hold it down, and as you hold it, you're prompted to take a deep breath and prompted to reflect on some kind of intention in your mind that you would want to share with that person. And when you at the end of you take one breath. It just takes 11 seconds, and in that one moment you've slowed yourself down. You've taken a pause in your day. It's crazy how just taking one breath, taking one pause, can kind of reset your energy for an entire day. But here, yeah. So for 11 seconds, you take a breath. Maybe you take two breaths, and then you're able to share, if you want, an intention with that person that you were holding in your heart. And when that act of slowing down, witnessing somebody's story, sharing an intention for them, is really the centerpiece of our entire platform. It's non-judgmental. We're not asking people to comment on things, to go back and forth and debate. We're just asking for people to witness one another and be seen. And ultimately, our hope is that, yeah, that's just a button, but there is a whole skill set around that. There's a whole way of being around how we being able to communicate what we need from others, being able to give what we are able to give to meet others. We want to help build an army of space holders and train more and more people what it means to hold space, and how to receive it and how to give it. And if we can do that, we believe that that's a big part of the impact we can make, for strangers, but also for the people that we love that are closest to us, because we don't really have the language. Again, no one teaches us the language of how to show up for somebody, really, and that's why no one knows what to say.
And how do you ensure that your values remain at the center of your leadership as your work continues to grow?
I mean, I think that's a great question. I mean, I think you just can't have values that are just on the wall, for one thing, right? So you have to live your values. I mean, before you come up with your values, you need to figure out, do these values align with who I want to be and who I want to become? If and it doesn't, not all sets of organizational values have to be one and the same. I mean, I think honestly, to attract and retain employees, for example, as a leader, you the the more nuanced and specific your values are, the more people can opt into the culture that you want to build. If you try to be everything to everybody, you're not going to have a team that reflects your values. So you need to be intentional about what those values are and search yourself and your leadership team, for what those values are, and then you have to hold yourself accountable, to those values. You have to be able to call yourself out. Like, you don't, values and missions and purposes. These are all asymptotes. You can't always live them out. They're just aspirational, and you don't always succeed at reaching them or meeting them or living that way. And that's okay. But if you keep orienting towards them and being able to call yourself out when you don't, then you're always in this process of trying to get closer to that asymptote in each moment of leadership. And so I feel like that's really, really, really important. And then I also think, maybe this depends on what kind of product you're building or what kind of offering or service, but I really feel like it's important to embed your. I don't think values should just be something that's um, reflected back at you as a leader for your culture. I think values should also be something that's embedded in the core of your product. And I think this is where we see a lot of problems in the world. There's a lot of products where people say, "Oh, we have a nice mission, we have this and that," but if you actually look at the product, have they actually embedded those features into the product themselves? Is it actually intentional? I mean, everything does have a flip side. So every value, it might be a really positive value, and I'm just caveating that, this positive value here can also have a flip side, that is an unintended consequence. So it's hard to design a perfect system, but I do think people could be more intentional about designing their values into the actual service itself, and those principles can happen in very lightweight ways that can really improve the product experience for people. And if you prioritize, for example, let's just take something like we're now in Zoom, right here, but there's, like, I think Google pioneered this more, as they, uh, little moments of delight where it's like I can pick a background or a little, or if, like, there was a medical device company that was doing MRIs for kids, and what did they do is their differentiator was they decorated the MRI machines in ways that kids would enjoy, like a haunted house or something cool. It was like embedding small moments of value that are more human into the product itself, into the service in small ways, I think goes a long way in reinforcing for yourself that the values are a two-way street. They're both internal and can be external.
Well, we're going to take one final break. And when we return, we'll talk about Brad's vision for the future and the legacy he hopes to leave. Don't miss a thing. Follow Expressions of Leadership on your favorite podcast app and connect with us on Instagram and YouTube at Expressions of Leadership. Welcome back to Expressions of Leadership. I'm Michele Kawamoto Perry, and today we're speaking with Brad Wolfe on how purpose, community, and leadership can grow from even the most difficult experiences. Now, Brad, looking ahead, what is your vision for the future of your work?
Yeah, so I mean, there's two big intersecting paths that are converging right now, and I'm really grateful for this moment that I'm in. On the one hand, on a personal level, I've just been releasing music about loss. It's my first music I've released in 20 years, and it's saying to myself, there's often this. They talk about work-life balance. We talk about work-life balance, which in many ways, if you've heard this or not, this paradigm, but by dichotomizing work and life as a work-life balance, we are implicitly um, um, calling work not part of life. And I do not want that to be the case for myself. I spend so much time working, and I want to have work be an expression of who I am and what the kind of life that I want. And for me, a huge part of that is my own music. And so I'm so grateful to be making music right now about these stories of people that I care about and the situations and experiences that I've had around loss, life, and love, and to be releasing that music out into the world. So that's a big piece on the personal journey of mine in my band, Brad Wolfe and the Moon, under which I perform that. But then, so that's how I'm living it. That's kind of how I find peace. But on the Reimagine front, we are just launching this platform simultaneously that allows people to find their own music through the hard parts of life, that creates the scaffolding, a new type of social platform that guides people from transforming their pain into purpose, their grief into growth, their adversity into action. They don't all have to rhyme, or alliterate rather. It's the idea is that if there's a space where we can see those journeys unfold, where we're becoming, um, and celebrating that act of becoming and the movement, and not just being stuck in our pain, but transmuting it, channeling it, um, alchemizing it. We feel like we're building the tools for that to actually happen for anyone. And we're trying to meet people where they are, and we have a bunch of different programs that intersect and ways of exploring, and I'm just so we've been working at this now for literally years, and it's finally starting to emerge, where we're holding spaces for people in grief, whether they're people who've lost loved ones to COVID, people who've gone through breakups, divorce, people who are in financial distress, or also, we've been supporting caregivers. We've been supporting death doulas, folks who sit by the bedside of the dying, physicians, hospice professionals, people who are current are have the experience of having to care for people in the hardest situations, and who's caring for them, and making sure that all of us as a system, that as a world, that we together can support one another in both being with our pain, turning towards it, but also turning it into something for ourselves and for others. Because I really think that's the only way we're going to be able to meet this moment. There's a lot of people who want to take away the bad things in the world, and that is great. The fact is, there are bad, challenging things that happen in life, and they're storms of life, and we see them increasingly. And unless we can learn a better way to respond, instead of numbifying ourselves, instead of lashing out at one another, instead of having that pain eat us up from the inside, um, and it doesn't just have to be therapy. There's a million ways to process our pain. That's the beauty of it. There's as million ways as there are creative people in the world and creative ideas. If we can keep pointing ourselves toward those transmutation points, um, and maybe, in response to a war, we can get to know our neighbor. I mean, it's as simple as that. What would the world look like if that was how we responded? If everyone responded that way, there would be no more wars. Now, that's a pretty lofty idea, but even on the small scale, it is healing for you. So there can be a selfish, beautiful part of it. It heals somebody else, and so our vision really is to scale this platform to get the resources that we need to help something like this be, a platform that is just as ubiquitous for the hard parts of life as some of these other solutions are, um, that end up honestly causing, I would argue, potentially more harm than connection.
Well, what do you hope people who have worked with you and been part of your community will remember most about you and your leadership?
I guess my dream is that people believe if they see my leadership, they see and that they've experienced a belief in the possible. That unless we believe something is possible, we're not going to make it possible. I mean, it is, you can see that on the negative side, right? You can see, oh, you dream of an atomic weapon. It's like, oh, now we create them. You dream of like flying cars. Okay, we have flying cars. It's like unless we start dreaming for the way the world can be, which is acknowledging that world has hard parts, but then trying to create solutions on a really personal level that actually give us glimpses for ourselves of what's possible. I don't think we're going to be able to solve anything. And so I really want to try to create spaces where we can find those just, they don't have to be grand, just small moments. And I hope people in our community have been able to and are able to point to some of those moments and have experienced them, that feel that sense of connection where you feel I feel it sometimes in these events that we put on and these experiences, the hair on your neck stands up because you feel something kind of human grabbing you. And it's like, what else is there?
Well, how can people learn more about your work, your music, and the communities you've created?
Thanks so much. Yeah, so you can, on the musical front, you can go to bradwolfe.com, BRADWOLFE. .com. You can learn more about my music. And then Reimagine, we invite everyone to be part of our community. It's free, it's accessible, it's a nonprofit. I don't know if I even mentioned that. Let'sreimagine.org. And if you go check it out, you'll be able to get access also to this new platform we're building, as well as hundreds of free events that we offer for people to join in community with as much or little anonymity as you desire, to engage in these types of topics with us and try to move the needle in ways that we're describing here in this really wonderful conversation that I'm so grateful to have been able to have with you, Michelle.
And now it's time for the Wisdom and Whimsy segment of the show, where I get to ask the guest one advice question and one fun question. Let's start with the advice question. For those who may be going through a difficult season right now, what's one small step that they can take to begin to move forward?
I think the biggest one, sorry, there's a million steps one can take, but I think one that feels good is, I believe that most of you, if you toggle through your life, can go back and just think about one experience of resilience that you've had in your life, sometime in your life where something challenging has happened, that you've made your way through that, and try to think about something that manifested from that experience, something new, some new possibilities, some new direction that manifested from that experience. And just, you don't have to apply it to whatever experience you're going through right now. Just hold that in your heart, that within your being, you contain, all the hard parts, but also a lot of the beautiful parts of life, and that you're going to be able to access all of those moving forward.
And now for the fun question. You're a Sharks hockey fan and a lifelong music lover. If you could design the perfect community gathering, what would it include? Music, sports, food, people? Paint that picture for us.
Yeah, so this is maybe slightly self-serving, but I think it'd be so fun. Is okay, let's imagine a hockey game where, what if during the breaks, it doesn't have to even be my band, but what if instead of you hear the music pumping out on the loudspeakers, there was like a live band that was kind of curating the soundtrack to that game, but it was like a live band generating songs that went with those experiences, but it was more of a jazzified approach. So maybe as the game progressed and the moments of tension and this and that, the whole game would have a soundtrack that mirrored the emotional states of the game. I think that would be kind of an out there and really really fun idea. Maybe popular bands, yeah, could go and perform live at these games. I mean, there's already 17,000 fans gathered, they would probably be excited about it. So let's let's watch some hockey together and see this come to fruition. And if no one else wants to do it, I will.
I'll be right there with you. I'm going to join you on it. That sounds a lot of fun to me.
And we can have some good food too. I mean, food is important.
Absolutely. Well, Brad, thank you for your openness and your compassion and your really deep commitment to helping people transform pain into connection and meaning. Your leadership demonstrates that sometimes the most powerful thing that we can offer others is our presence and that willingness to walk alongside them through life's most difficult moments.
Thank you so much, Michelle. It's been just a real privilege to be in conversation with you, to have you ask such wonderful questions, and I'm excited to have this connection to the people listening right now, to this or watching right now, and would welcome any conversation with anyone on these topics. Um, all perspectives and feedback are very welcome. So I appreciate this chance and this community that you're creating through your beautiful interrogation of what leadership really means.
Well, thank you, Brad. I certainly really appreciate the wisdom that you are sharing, and I'm sure the audience does as well. If this conversation resonated with you, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Expressions of Leadership wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also connect with us on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and share this episode with someone who may need a reminder that healing, connection, and purpose are always possible. Until next time, I'm Michele Kawamoto Perry, inviting you to lead with compassion, listen deeply, and create space for what matters most. If you haven't done so already, make sure to click on that follow button so you don't miss out on future episodes. Have a guest you'd like us to interview? Questions, ideas, or just want to say hello? You can reach us at letstalk@expressionsofleadership.com or connect with us on Instagram or YouTube. We'd love to hear from you. And as always, thanks to our amazing team behind the scenes for making this podcast possible, including our sound engineer, Graham Palmer, and my chief encourager and advisor, Jeremiah Higgins.